So welcome back to Stu Structures. We're here with the second part in the building of the wash rack. We're going to work on some plumbing, so stay tuned. Okay, so with the wash racks built, we're adding all the plumbing now, like I said in my intro. There's stand pipes that come up through those big tall wash racks that have valves on the top of them and attachments and stuff. They needed a way to turn it on and off the water, and implements on top to be able to spray the locomotives with. And in these pictures I've got, they actually show some this little water stands that are about 3 feet tall or so on the deck as well, and have hoses coming off of them with brass attachments at the end for turning on water and hitting from ground level as well, and washing or rinsing the locomotives. So we're going to build some of those little stands as well. So in this video, let's just get started on the plumbing and see if we get some water flowing by the ends. Here we go. I showed you this basic picture of the stands before, but here you can also see the ground units, and these aren't, even when I blow them up, they're not good pictures. But for the basic piping, we're going to use this 16-inch rod for most of the heavy-duty piping that goes on in making all this. And I need to figure out the height in this, so what I'm going to do is just lay this on one of the stands and figure out the height for the main upright pipes, and go ahead and cut all 9 of the upright pipes that needed to be added for these stands. And then once I have them done, what I'm going to use for valves and angles and stuff are just parts of old sprues. I always keep all my old sprues because they're good to cut up for plastic for various parts. And see, here you can see that I have elbows, and then I have kind of a T section which I'm going to use for valves for turning on and off the water. So all this was free parts. And basically I just glue the valves to the top of that stand pipe, and then I add an additional piece of pipe to the top of that, and that's the basic stand. And then I put a 90-degree angle on top of that, and that's what will bring the water up to the hose that's on top of the stand. Now I'm using these styrene tubes here to cut little tiny round circles, and I just cut a whole bunch of these, and I'm going to turn these into knobs for the valves to turn on and off the water. I don't really have anything else that'll work, but here you can see I come back and glue those on the front of all those plastic things that I used for valves, and basically I have a knob. Now I have to find a drill bit that needs to be about the same exact size as this pipe to just drill a hole through the decking so I can slide this pipe down through. And then I just cut a real tiny piece of styrene to use as supports to glue to the handrails, and one underneath the deck as well. Now you can see here the stairs do not have handrails, they're just a basic set of stairs. So I go through my box and find several pieces of styrene here that'll work. I'm just going to make the stairs instead of using pre-made kit stairs. And I come up with a drawing here and figure out the angle for the plastic, and then all the angles for all the wood supports that will go on for the stairs. Then I cut all the uprights. I need 2 for each set of stairs, so there's enough here for 9 different staircases for all the different towers. And then I need to cut the treads, and I want to make sure the treads are the same exact width, because I don't want to have any problems when I go to glue these together. So I break out my chopper and I just cut all the treads for all the different 9 staircases that I have to put together, and I know they're all exactly the same using the chopper. And I also have to cut supports for underneath the pieces, and I'm going to go ahead and cut all those with this as well that'll support the treads. And then I just use this drawing that I made, and I just tape on the plastic on top of that, and I use this tiny styrene and glue on for the tread supports onto those. And then once I get these glued, I'll just cut them up, I'll turn them over and cut off the excess flush with the base styrene that I have there. And then, you know, I used something real high-tech to figure out the opposite angles. I just held the paper up to a glass window and traced the lines through the paper to lay out the one on the other side. You know, no big deal there. And then I just put a couple of these treads into place, using my square to make sure that they're perfectly square. And then once I have the frame, the rest of these treads are easy just to slide and glue into place, and then that's the basic staircase just made from scratch. You know, they charge a lot for these if you buy them in kits, and this didn't cost much at all to do. Now I go ahead and cut these two plates, one for underneath the base of it, and I have to add this plate onto the side of the wash stand itself too, to be able to glue this to it. And I just come back and put black paint on everything, and except for the hose attached to the top, that's pretty much that. Now we're going to make some of those ground stands. So what I'm doing here is just making a basic base plate, and I'm finding the center point on those base plates, and then there's a smaller plate that I have to cut up for above, and I'll show that, the reasoning for that a little later on. Now I need a pipe to come up through that, so I cut all these pipes to the height that I need them to be, and then I come back and glue them just slightly behind the off-center mark of that plate, because there's going to be 3 support rods coming up to connect these. And I'm just going to use this angle for the support rods. This is a lot heavier than what was used on the initial ones in the original picture, but I come back and cut all those to length, and I had to come back and trim them again because I cut them just a little bit too long for the angles and stuff. But there's angles on the bottom and the top, and I just cut them back and make basically a tripod type of stand around that plate. And I go ahead and glue all 9 of those together, and that's the bottom half of the base plate. Now the top half, I need something similar to what I put on top that stand, so I'm using these sprue parts once again, which has an angle on top and then a small piece underneath for the valve, and I'm using these same circles that I cut before to glue onto the face of those for the knob that turns on and off the valve. Then I glue all that onto the smaller plates that I showed you earlier that I didn't tell you what they were for, and they're basically for this. And then I have the whole top half of the stand in place and ready just to go ahead and glue onto the bottom part of the stand. So I come back and do that, and then basically the stand itself is pretty much together at this point, with all the knobs for turning on the valves and everything like that, pretty much done and in place. So that's the basic stand. Now I want to use something pretty solid and easy to work with for the hoses for these. So what I'm going to do is just use this, I think it's a florist wire actually, and I come back and bend all my hoses it's not attached right here in this picture, but I just bend all 9 of those in different configurations because they wouldn't be the same just laying around on the deck the way that the people are going to leave them when they're done using them. So I come back, I take some more of those little round circles that I did and slide them back on the end where it would have the nozzle, and I put a tiny piece of plastic on top of that for an on-off valve, and just come back and paint it kind of a brass collar, and that gives me a nozzle on the end and a valve, so the person using the hose right there can turn it on and off from the hose end versus having to come clear back to the main unit to turn it off and on. And they could control pressure with this as well. So that's my basic hose put together at this point. So what I'm going to do is just use some of those little round circles and put them again on the end of the hose that I used for valves before, and then that gives me something to glue onto the end of the nozzle of the stand pipe there, and that gives me a good adhesion. And then that pretty much just gets all that put together for me. And I'm just going to continue on with doing the hoses for all of the wash racks the same way. And here's just a shot of basically where I am at the end of this video. Like I said, I have 9 of these wash racks to build. I did get all of the the standpipes at the ground level built during this video. There might be some touch up on some paint on some stuff. I still have to get the hose on the wash rack itself, but it's going to be done the same as I did the hoses for the lower one, so that's self-explanatory. And I'm just going to continue working on all of these as I work on other projects. It's just time consuming, and a lot of times when you're working on other projects you have to let it set for a little bit for paint to dry or for glues to dry or something like that, and it just gives me something to do for filler time as I go through and do other things. So I'm just going to continue working on these as I'm working on other projects and get the rest of the wash racks done. But that gives you a pretty good idea of how to do this and to build something similar if you want to. So there you have the second episode and final episode of building the wash racks. I might just throw a picture out there later on at some point in time when I get them all finished and all done. But basically this gives you the good idea of how to do things like that. But those little racks that I built, I mean, you could build them and change the tops on them and put tanks on for oil storage, or use that type of a structure for a lot of different reasons around the layout. I've seen them used for propane tanks for heating small railroad cars and stuff in yards. It's used as offices and stuff like that. So that type of a structure could be used for a lot of different things. But in any case, this was a pretty big area just outside the roundhouse in Grafton, so it'll be nice to have all these to put on there when I eventually do get everything all put together in a layout to put them on. So anyway, it's not fine scale type of stuff. I think it serves the purpose really well. I didn't want to run out and buy all those little miniature nozzles and valves and all this stuff, but I think what I did replicates the feeling and gives you a good idea of what was there. And I think for somebody just glancing across the railroad, I think it will substitute really well for the real thing. The bases on the ground stands are a little heavier duty than what was out there. To some extent, I like building things. I had said earlier that they're a little fragile. They're not bad. I can handle them, and they're not going to fall apart in my fingers. But I definitely wouldn't want a cat coming into the layout room and laying on one or something, because it would probably give pretty readily. So in any case, they're nice little structures though, and they'll add a ton of detail to a little area that won't have a lot going on in it. And you can even change the hoses and put a couple of guys there with scrubbing brushes working on a locomotive or something if you wanted to build up the scene a little more. There were shovels underneath the stands and some other things laying around that add a little more interest to the scene as well. So in any case, just a nice another little area that will be done on the layout when I get them all finished. If you have any questions or anything about the stuff that I do, please ask. And I've got some other things I'm working on building and getting some other projects started to do more videos. I'm in the process of doing some now and get some other stuff up. But if there are things that you would like to see me build, I only really build things for what I need for my layout, but a lot of times things that I need to build might be similar to projects that you need to build for your model layout. So if you have questions or want to see something done or something like that, leave comments below or contact me and let me know these things, and I'll try to get the information out there that people are really looking for. Speaking of information, share this with other people in the hobby. A lot of people out there don't know this kind of stuff exists out here and wonder how can I do that. There are a few other really good scratch builders out here that do videos as well. So the information's out here. You just need to share it with people in the hobby so that they can learn. And the biggest part of the learning is just putting your hands on and doing this. Just get some materials and scratch build. You don't have to go out and spend a lot of money. I try to do everything as frugal as I can. I guess I should use the word cheap. I just don't have a lot of money to put into my hobby right now. Maybe in a few years I will overcome that. A lot of things have happened in my life. So I look for ways that I can do things that are less expensive than just going out and buying everything. I mean, a lot of people say, well, why don't you just buy this, or why don't you just buy that? Well, I enjoy making things, for one thing. I like hands-on, and I get a lot of self-satisfaction out of building this stuff and then using it on my layout. And nobody else is going to have one like that, unless they watch my videos and build one like I built it. That it's not going to exist out there in the world except for on my layout. So in any case, subscribe to my channel. I appreciate it when you come share this time with me, and hit the little bell icon down there next to the subscribe button, and you'll be notified when these videos come out. I throw a lot of odd things out there. I mean, this was a 2-video quick build on something. A lot of my videos are longer. Those of you that follow me, some of my buildings are quite long, actually. But in any case, I'm going to try to put some more of these simple videos out there. So subscribe, come back and share this time with me, learn something, I hope, and drag your model trains out and play with them this winter. Scratch build something for your layout, and happy model railroading.